Looking back on the past few hours, it is clear this Congress will not be the same after today. And I hope it will be the better. I hope not just this institution, but I hope every American pauses for that moment and thinks among themselves that we can disagree with one another, but not dislike each other. We can respect the voices of others. There's many times we debate on this body, and we should. There's many times we can get heated. I still consider Steny Hoyer a very good friend. There's times I get upset. I'll call him at home to express what things I may not see fair or just. But that's the way we should handle things. The majority leader is right. We are all Americans first. But should we also think for a moment, what do we put on social media? What do we convey to one another? Just because you have a personal opinion different than mine, you have a right to say it, but nobody has a right to become a mob. And we all should stand united in condemning the mob together.
Yeah. Back over to the Senate, Mitt Romney, who has been opposed to these objections to the electoral vote counting, is speaking.
Events in Washington have taken a violent and tumultuous turn in the past few hours, as thousands of supporters of President Trump stormed the U.S. Capitol building, venting their anger at the victory of Joe Biden in the presidential election. They forced the evacuation and lockdown of Congress itself, where lawmakers were all set to approve the election result. Shortly before the clashes, President Trump had...
Yes, they have. I've just come from the Capitol here to this live position a few streets away. But what's happening there right now is the National Guard are now clearing that area, and the DC police are clearing the area. They're clearing the steps, and they're going through inside the Capitol, room by room, to re-secure it. The place is meant to be a citadel, and yet protesters managed to break in today and get right into the chamber itself. It has been an extraordinary day. It is what happens when, as you suggest, you unleash chaos. What happened today was unconstitutional in the extreme. One of the glories of the American system and the American Constitution is this peaceful transfer of power. It was the first constitution in the world to do that. It was the legacy of George Washington. He was the first world leader, if you like, to give up power without a fight or without having to be deposed. What happened today was that
those stunning images of a mob storming the Capitol followed another extraordinary moment.
Madam Speaker, members of Congress.
Vice President Mike Pence presiding over the special session of Congress in which the electoral votes are counted and the winner of the presidential election declared. And for the first time, Pence publicly breaking with the president.
Are you going to overturn the election results today?
Refusing the president's demands that he unlawfully overturn electoral votes for Biden. Pence releasing a letter saying, "My oath to support and defend the Constitution constrains me from claiming unilateral authority to determine which electoral votes should be counted and which should not." That letter released just minutes after President Trump called out Pence multiple times.
Mike Pence is going to have to come through for us.
At a massive rally across from the White House.
So I hope Mike has the courage to do what he has to do. And I hope he doesn't listen to the rhinos and the stupid people that he's listening to.
Later tweeting Pence didn't have the courage to do what should have been done. Today, again, pushing false claims of widespread fraud.
We will never give up. We will never concede. It doesn't happen. You don't concede when there's theft involved.
And today, for the first time, the top Senate Republican, Mitch McConnell, blasting the president and those rejecting Joe Biden's electoral college win.
If this election were overturned by mere allegations from the losing side, our democracy would enter a death spiral.
Still, at least 13 Republican senators and dozens of House Republicans were poised to raise objections to the results in at least 6 states, unless a commission is created to audit the election.
What does it say to the nearly half the country that believes this election was rigged if we vote not even to consider the claims of illegality and fraud in this election.
But shortly after the debate began, those protesters started storming in. And shortly after that moment, all the debate ended. They were going alphabetically through the states, and they've never made it past Arizona. Lester.
Kristen, we're hearing that some in the White House are now asking the president to make a more forceful statement. What can you tell us about that?
Well, that's absolutely right, Lester. I can tell you that some top White House staff are urging the president to respond strongly to what transpired today. Now, officials don't know if he's actually going to say anything else or issue a more forceful statement. And some Trump allies outside the White House are frustrated with his reluctance to do so. They had wanted him to go further in his remarks and to say something live, not what he released on tape. But the president is hesitant to aggressively push back against his own supporters.
Hey, NBC News fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe.
I want to say to the American people, the United States Senate will not be intimidated. We will not be kept out of this chamber by thugs, mobs, or threats. We will not bow to lawlessness or intimidation. We are back at our posts. We will discharge our duty under the Constitution and for our nation. And we're going to do it tonight. This afternoon, Congress began the process of honoring the will of the American people and counting the Electoral College votes. We've fulfilled this solemn duty every 4 years for more than 2 centuries. Whether our nation's been at war or at peace, under all manner of threats, even during an ongoing armed rebellion and the Civil War, the clockwork of our democracy has carried on.
That Saakashvili was going to refuse to give up power. That would lead to violence. It would end the nascent democratic reforms that were happening in that former Soviet republic. And so Senator Risch and I, the day after the election, went to visit President Saakashvili to try and talk him out of staying in power. And I remember very clearly going to his home, and we sat down with him and we pointed out that the hallmark of a democracy, what he had worked so hard for in his 8 years as president of Georgia, the hallmark of that was to turn over power in a peaceful election to the person that the voters chose.
Efforts of U.S. Capitol Police, federal, state, and local law enforcement, the violence was quelled. The Capitol is secured, and the people's work continues. We condemn the violence that took place here in the strongest possible terms. We grieve the loss of life in these hallowed halls, as well as the injuries suffered by those who defended our Capitol today.
They will fail, and history will remember.
And one other thing I would say, Lester, is, as we try to figure out, well, it looks now like the Capitol, the police are
Pete, let me break away from you a second, because things are happening very quickly there on the appears to be the east side of the Capitol. People are now have moved past the police and into the building. Ellis and Barbara, what can you tell us?
Hey, Lester, yeah, you can see what's happening right in front of us. We saw Capitol Police trying to push people back, hold them back, and arrest them. They did seem to be arresting some, but they no longer have been able to keep them back. You can see some Capitol.
Alexander Marquardt is there right in the middle of all of this. He's joining us on the phone right now. So, Alex, explain what you're seeing and what you're hearing. How worried are the folks where you are?
Well, they're not worried. In fact, Wolf, they're certainly energized. We're on the western side of the Capitol, right where the inauguration is going to take place in 2 weeks. And there's been a significant escalation in just the last few moments. The protesters had been relatively peaceful and held at bay by a police line. In the last few minutes, they have broken through that police line I am watching as we speak throngs of protesters climbing the steps on the western side of the Capitol. They have reached up onto the terrace of the Capitol. I can see at least half a dozen protesters scaling, literally climbing the walls of the Capitol to get up to where their fellow protesters are. In response, the police have fired tear gas. We've had several rounds of tear gas that have had protesters choking and their eyes streaming. Wolf, it is hard to say what the police presence is out here. I cannot see any sort of
complex, those clashes occurring outside in the very spot, as we've been discussing with Greg Milam there, where in 2 weeks' time precisely, President-elect Joe Biden will become President Biden. So a lot going on there. Also hearing that the current Vice President, Mike Pence, who presides over those senatorial meetings, presides over that chamber, has been taken to a place of safety. Well, we're trying to get more from the ground.
Lemon. Carrot.
It is the night that should deliver the coup de grace to Donald Trump's campaign to hold on to the White House. A curfew has come into effect after a night of violence. Donald Trump's supporters massed outside Congress and then forced their way in, leading to the suspension of the session, which was due to confirm Joe Biden as the next president. One person has been killed after being shot inside the Capitol, and improvised explosive devices have been found. The chaos followed senior Republicans, including the Vice President, making clear they would not overturn the results of the presidential election.
It was literally an attack on democracy. Supporters of Donald Trump scuffling with police inside the United States Capitol. Outside, thousands have besieged the building. Even at a time when everything seems remarkable in American politics, these are astonishing scenes. Inside the chamber, security personnel with guns drawn at the windows. Members of Congress sheltering in place on the floor. People taking what they could as souvenirs. At least one person was shot. Critically injured, police say. Others were injured in the clashes. The chaos and violence indicative of a country riven and a slice of the population unwilling to...
Show him clearing the steps. Bangs, and we've seen a lot of smoke. And Rich, if you can zoom in, you'll see that the police are trying to clear the area of the
Today, and we've stepped outside as we get set to host an exclusive live town hall with Donald Trump in our next hour.
Doesn't travel alone these days. He's brought a lot of support with him. We welcome his wife Melania, along with his adult children, Donald Jr., Ivanka, Eric, and Tiffany, all of you. Welcome. Good to have you here on the plaza. Let me, yes, you can clap. Let me start by asking you all for one word, not you, but the rest of you, one word. Give me one word to describe this campaign.
Leadership.
to Donald Trump earlier, even before he was admitted to the hospital, and said, I'm not going to be able to be at the inauguration because my doctors tell me sitting out there in the cold might, quote, put me 6 feet under, end quote. So
transparency and accountability. In the 2016 elections, lest we forget, many Democrats objected to the results and distrusted the election. I challenge my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to listen, but also to do our part to try to restore faith in our elections. Mr. President, we should all work to improve the integrity of the electoral system and the confidence of the American people in this bedrock of our great democratic republic. Today, I'll do my constitutional duty and oppose these efforts to reject the state-certified results. And tomorrow, in the wake of this attack on the Capitol, the pandemic that engulfs us, and other national challenges, let's work together for the people. Yield back.
Democratic leader.
Mr. President, I believe we have 8 minutes left, so I'd like to divide 4 to Senator King and 4 to Senator Van Hollen.
That's correct, leader.
Mr. President.
Senator from Maine.
Mr. President, Winston Churchill once said that he could do a 2-hour speech extemporaneously, but a 10-minute speech took immense preparation. I don't know what he would have said about a 4-minute speech. We are a 240-year anomaly in world history. We think that what we have here in this country is the way it's always been. It is a very unusual form of government. The normal form of government throughout world history is dictators, kings, czars, pharaohs, warlords, tyrants. And we thought 20 years ago the march of history was toward democracy, but it is in retreat in Hungary and Turkey. Goodness knows in Russia. Democracy as we have practiced it is fragile. It's fragile and it rests upon trust. It rests upon trust in facts. It rests upon trust in courts, in public officials, and yes, in elections. I don't sympathize or justify or in any way support, that's putting it mildly, what happened here today, but I understand it. I understand it because I saw those people interviewed today and they said, we're here